Shabbat Shalom, it's Rabbi David Barron with my Torah Talk. Before I begin, I want to tell you about a fantastic week that we had this week celebrating Israel. On Thursday night, we held an amazing concert celebrating Israel's 74th anniversary of independence with artists and speakers. It was a rousing night. And the next night, we held an evening celebrating the Israel Film Festival, and another sensational night, and I hope you were able to partake. If not, we want you to enjoy these weekly Torah Talks, as well as next week, make sure you live stream the Shabbat service that we'll be holding. It's called Those Who Chose, men and women who converted to Judaism, their motivations, what they've done in terms of inspiring others to study Judaism more deeply than they did in their childhood. So I'd like all of you to make sure you go to templelivestream.com or our temple website, Temple of the Arts. You'll hear a beautiful Shabbat service, and you'll also get to experience the lives of interesting young men and women who made Judaism their faith. This week's Torah portion is Kedoshim, which means holiness. You shall be holy because God is holy. What's the opposite of holiness? The opposite of holiness is something that desecrates humanity. And that's what occurred in Israel last week when 4 wonderful men, fathers, decent human beings, were axed to death by Palestinian terrorists who brutally butchered them in the street. You know, when we hear these acts of violence, we recognize that from an early age, these haters are inculcated with a constant teaching of Jew hatred, of anti-Semitism in its highest form. And their unwillingness to reach a compromise and live together in peace is an example of what Israel has to confront. And we here in the United States have to confront it as well. Thankfully, not as much as others do. Israel is still rather popular in the United States. According to a recent Harris poll, 71% of people surveyed consider Israel favorably or very favorably. Now that's remarkable. That means our Christian friends and neighbors recognize they share a bond with Israel, as we do, the ancestral homeland of the Jewish people, the birthplace of Christianity, and also, so importantly, the shared values respecting democracy and human rights. All of this gives us encouragement in a time of great duress and difficulty. So what's the opposite of holiness? The opposite of holiness is also bombing civilian apartments, killing men, women, and children, which the Russian incursion into Ukraine has caused. So much death and destruction. So how do we go about being holy? Well, you know, the Hebrew word for holiness is kodesh, or kedoshim in the plural. But kodesh, holiness, is really about everyday life. It's not about going off to a silent retreat or going up into a mountain and hiding in a cave and meditating. It's about being in life, in connection with others, and treating them decently and respectfully. In fact, for every phase of life, the root of the word, kof dalet shin, kodesh, is used to describe events in life. Marriage is called kiddushin, the union of a man and woman to create a new family and a new life, a new unit in the community. That's called Kedoshim, holiness, because they enter into that covenant with a sense of sacred purpose. When someone dies, we say the Kaddish, again, the root of the same word. We sanctify God even in the presence of loss and recognize that death is part of life. Now, for many of us, we think that the opposite of life is death, but the opposite of death is birth. And we believe the soul undergoes a rebirth after it leaves this human form. So the word holiness is also used in something that we observe every Shabbat. When we bless the wine, that's called the kiddush. Again, the root of the same word, kuf dalet shin, the source of joy and celebration, which in some cultures, like in ancient Greek culture, was the basis of Dionysian rites. In Roman culture, the source of bacchanals, drunkenness with wine. We take the wine and we make it a moment of celebration, but also a moment of holiness. So as we think about our purpose as human beings in this life, we remember that we have a task to perform, to take the simple and mundane and make it holy. and to stand together united against those who would desecrate humanity, who would be the opposite of holiness in wanton destruction and murder. That, as we unite, we will not tolerate. And I hope we can elevate the consciousness of everyone we encounter and infuse their lives with a sense of holiness this Shabbat and every week ahead of us. Shabbat Shalom.